it is time to order seeds. I write to publish my poems, and with that money I buy seeds for our collection of over 100 varieties of roses that delight us for 7 months of the year. The collection of shrubs, trees, and plants has been formed gradually until the little arboretum now boasts of more than 500 varieties of shrubs and other plants, all very beautiful results that can be made with a very small outlay of not more than $30 and the help of Tom and Charity Devonshire. The good man has become a confirmed idler, I fear, and in vain spent all my own energy in trying to persuade him to take his place with the workers and lift us out of poverty into which we have fallen. My own small income alone saves us from destitution. His chief delight is to discuss politics with his cronies in the little village. Steve bound me to an unbearable existence by deceiving me when I was young and very tender-hearted and very confiding. I often wonder that I am so good to him. He has made my life terrible, and yet, because he is affectionate, I am fond of him. I cling to him. Beginning of a romance. He gazed as he would read my soul, and I, the flowing skies. But through and through in every pulse, I felt those gazing eyes. The sun had set, and yet we sat beneath the stars. He stirred, his breath came fast. He said, "Sweetheart, let down the bars." It was a wild and lonely hill, and in the long grass at my feet you lay. The breeze was almost still, poisoning on airy wings and sweet with clover breath of resting cows. The light fell softly through the boughs. That light was dear for dear love's sake. 'Twas there our hearts began to wake. I do not wish to be free, nor to marry Reinhold, poor unhappy wanderer that he is. I told Reinhold not to mention when he wrote to me that he had seen me in Washington. Steve does not know that. I let him come to see me. I do this because I must have some friends and interests apart from the dull routine at home, or lose my mind. I could not be without some friends. And Steve is so jealous and so overbearing and so unreasonable. He expects me to endure a life of terrible loneliness year in and year out during his life. I tried it. 20 years and more I have tried it, and I have no strength to go on. Usually, Steve insists on showing him Reinhold's letters. He has no right to do so, because he tricked me into an unhappy marriage. I deny absolutely that he has any right over me. I am free to do as I please. Oh, poor Steve. Oh, if we only had money enough to live in the city or in some pleasant neighborhood. He was raised with servants on every hand, even once having his shirts pressed and ironed when he was a soldier in the Rockbridge Artillery. He plays Muggins dominoes with his cronies by the hour at the Muggins Club, so-called, a shack on King Street he called the A.S. Dandridge Farm Implements Shop in the village. How glorious it would be! A lovely life could still be if a man, young, wealthy, and handsome, and a count, adored me. William Lucas writes that Count von Rosen is an impostor. He said the true count confronted him in court. Of course, I cannot believe a word of all this, and yet there is certainly something mysterious about his behavior. May God help me. I ought to be happy, or at least content, for my husband loves me dearly. God forgive me for being so restless and disconnected. I must take up the burden of life again as cheerfully as I can. Alas, the days go on, dear. How dull the daylight seems, since you went down the road, dear, and left me to my dreams. Left me to bear my weary load as I toil after down the road. Society for the Suppression of Nuisances. I wish that a society for the suppression of nuisances could be formed in every country neighborhood, and that it would take stringent measures to suppress the unwelcome guest. In this part of the world, the door of one's house is supposed to be always wide open to all comers. We have to keep up the traditions of our ancestors before the war, and because the southern planters were flooded with visitors all summer, we, too, in spite of changed conditions of things, must observe the sacred laws of hospitality, however inconvenient they may be. In the North, they are wiser than we and do these things better. You are invited for a certain number of days, and you don't overstay your time. You don't go unless you are asked, and presumably you are not asked unless you are wanted. Oh, it is far otherwise with us. If a relation, no matter how distant, or a friend of a relation, or a friend of a friend, or a friend of a friend's relation comes within 50 miles of you, you are bound to invite him or her, it almost always is a her, to your house for an indefinite stay. Oh, the cook may be ill or non-existent. The children may all have the measles. You may be half dead yourself, but no matter. Nothing matters except that the laws of hospitality be not infringed. When your guest, after driving you to the verge or over the verge of nervous prostration, finally wearies of you and proposes to depart in search of new victims, you must set your teeth and urge her to stay as if your future salvation depended upon it. When you have guests, you must not leave them to their own devices an hour. You cannot go and shut yourself into your room for a quiet morning's work. You cannot laze in the hammock through a long afternoon. You must exert yourself to be entertaining every minute of the day and half the night, except when you are preparing delicacies in the kitchen over a steaming stove. It is always the hottest weather that the unwelcome guest makes her appearance. Oh, it's so easy for husbands to be hospitable. When time is up, he insists upon a longer stay, and that so urgently that he will not take no for an answer. He does not have to keep house, nor instruct the cook in the art of dessert making when the kitchen thermometer marks 98 degrees. He's only conscious of an agreeable listener to the stories his wife got tired of so many years ago. And he enjoys eating the desserts. The unexpected guest is almost always the unwelcome guest.